Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Boy, some people really seem to be triggered by Donald Trump yesterday posted a mock-up of him, like a painting of him wearing a king's crown. He said, long live the king. And he's just trolling you people, okay? Don't get so upset. They're like, isn't this cringe? I'm like, well, I mean, kind of, but it's also less cringe than vagina hats. If you're not embarrassed for that, I don't want to hear about his megalomaniac fake time cover. But the real question is, it's been floated that we get a DOGE dividend out of D.C. Elon had mentioned it. Trump said $5,000 is kind of the number we're tossing around. What do you think? 800-288-9227. Do you deserve a DOGE dividend? Let's go to Corbin in Mesoforny. You're on the James Show. What do you think about the DOGE dividend, Corbin?
Hi, James. Well, I, for one, I think like anybody else would love a $5,000 check. But besides what I want, I think it is reasonable to believe that it would cause inflation. But correct me if I'm wrong. The reason it caused inflation last time was because this money was printed out of thin air to give to us, whereas this money was already ours, like the one guy had already said.
No, that's not the deal.
Is it not?
No, so what we're doing is the money that we're cutting now, because we don't have a balanced budget, is money that would otherwise be printed. Now, instead of just taking it off the books, if we instead took the money that was going to be printed and made it into DOGE checks instead of something woke in the other side of the world, they still have to print that money.
See, now I think that's where the confusion lies then, because that definitely would cause inflation.
Yeah, and look, there's the big difference there, because if we had a surplus in D.C. and we turn around and we handed out that money, that would not be inflationary. But until we get the budget balanced and then start making cuts on top of that, it's inflationary.
Okay.
All right. Well, take it easy in Mesoforny. Thanks, Corbin. Do they call it that there, or do we just call it that everywhere else to make fun of them? Because if I lived in Forney, I would be making those shirts already. Dan and Terrell, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think about the DOGE dividend? Oh, he just hung up as soon as I was going to him. Well, that's unfortunate. Let's try this one. This is David in Royce City. You're on the James Show. What do you think of the DOGE checks?
Hello, James. Hey, you know what? I'm kind of against it. I'd let us see it go to the deficit and get us out of the hole and maybe save on some property tax and Social Security tax.
My concern, I totally agree with you, by the way. My concern is, though, that there's a lot of people who just hear that they're going to get money, and so they think, yes. And so, I mean, we've seen this, not just during COVID. You know, everyone loved getting the checks then. I was like one of only 4 people saying, please do not send us money. That is so dumb. You're going to ruin our lives. I think I remember my first handout from the government like that being from George W. Bush. However, his was different. In his first year of the presidency, they ran a surplus. I know they like to say, well, we hadn't had a surplus since Bill Clinton. Well, technically, George W. Bush's first year, we had a surplus. Yes. And I think I got like $218 back or something. It wasn't very much. But that was like a non-inflationary, because it wasn't deficit spending, surplus. And if we were going to check under those circumstances, I would be for it. But until we balance the budget, I think it's a terrible idea, because I think we all just learned that the price you pay through inflation is going to hurt a lot worse than the chunk of money that you get.
Exactly. In my perspective, maybe a little bit different, because I'm retired firefighter. My wife, retired teacher. We're not wealthy by any means, but we have planned, and we have a comfortable life. But at the same time, my kids and grandkids, I would rather see a balanced budget. And like you, we got the COVID check. I cashed it. Didn't ask for it.
You better cash it. You're screwing yourself even harder. Now you got to deal with the inflation, and you didn't even get the free money. So no, I don't blame anyone who cashes it. But
yeah, we did. But I'd vote against it. In fact, I'm a send a text or a letter to my congressmen and senators to do that. I vote against that, not because I don't want it, but because I think it's, money misspent is how we got here. Well, so let's still do it again.
Right. And let me go ahead and put down my position a little further, because I don't want y'all to think that I would prefer to get a check as long as it's not inflationary. My actual personal preference is I don't want to get a check, especially if it's deficit spending, or even if it's a surplus for the year and we get it and it's not inflationary, until we pay down the national debt. We have $36 trillion that we owe people. Then and only then will I call for stimulus checks or a DOGE dividend. So three things. It can't be inflationary, meaning it can't be done with deficit spending. And if it is done with surplus spending, do we have a national debt that money should go to first? And then once that's paid down, then we can have the conversation. I'm not even sure if I would support it then, because, silly old me keeps thinking, well, if we can save some money, we could do it like Harvard and Yale, and all colleges pretty much have an endowment. You know what I mean by an endowment? I went to ETBU. They have a big endowment too. You just put millions and millions up to billions of dollars in an account, and then you live off the interest. And what if we had just saved a bunch of money that we could have an endowment in DC where they lived off the interest instead of taxing us? Anyone ever even thought of that? Everyone, not only get off the credit card, do what retired people do where you save money. This is what you're doing in your 401k right now, or your IRA. You're piling up money. And then one day you're not just going to go spend that down. You're going to live off the interest. You're going to come up with an income plan. You're going to annuitize it. And then boom, you have money that just keeps coming for the rest of your life that doesn't end. And it's not shaky. It doesn't matter what the market does. It doesn't matter what other external factors there are. We should be aiming for that instead of trying to give ourselves $5,000 before we even begin to balance the budget. But I don't know. I'm kind of proud of you guys. Y'all are a little more mature than I expected. I get a lot of money grubbing people in shows past. Walter, Grand Prairie, you're next up on the James Show. What do you think about the DOGE dividend?
I think it's a bad idea. I really think that all that money that they find should go to pay off the national debt.
All right. Well, I agree with you, and you agree with me. You have anything to add to that?
No, I'm like you. Once we get the national debt paid off, if we have surplus, then yeah, you can cut out checks.
Are you concerned about our neighbors who aren't as economically sane as you and me?
Well, it's going to be worse if they issue checks. Like you said, it's going to cause inflation. It's going to be.
It'll be worse. It'll be worse in a year or two. But immediately, you're going to get yourself a lot of good PR. You're going to have a lot of happy people. This is a politically popular move, even though from our view of statecraft, it's the wrong thing. So, I mean, that's just one of the downfalls of sharing the country with a bunch of people who aren't as economically astute as us, Walter.
Yeah, I understand that too.
All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks for listening out in Grand Prairie. What do you think? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Should we get DOGE checks? Coming up next, we're going to talk about an adjacent topic. People struggling with credit debt. Doesn't that sound familiar? Not the country, families. We'll talk about that. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Should we be getting a DOGE check? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Got some hot callers lined up about that. But real quick, there's, this pops up on the comment section under a lot of these Cash Patel stories, but it happened on the live stream that's happening now. If you follow WBAP on Facebook or X, you would see this. But some fella said, Cash is a DEI hire. And then his next comment was, so DEI for MAGA, but none for you. No, see, we don't believe in MAGA. Cash got the job not because his skin color or his ethnicity or nationality or other immutable traits. It's because he's awesome, because we like what he says about the FBI needing to root out corruption. It's because he was like a deputy director of national intelligence, and he already rooted out the Steele dossier and backed up and was a whistleblower about the FBI agents who lied on the FISA court documents to spy on Carter Page and during the 2016 election. And after he did that, he was one of the people who 43 people had their phones hacked by the FBI. I'm sorry. It was leaked. It was just an accident. So he's not only done the right thing, been in the position before, exposed it, and then took the suffering of their retribution because he was correct about them. And then on top of that, he's been called a conspiracy theorist for saying things that turned out to be true, like the vaccine doesn't prevent the spread of the disease and masks and lockdowns are worthless. No, he's been proven correct. He got there based on merit. See, it's a myth that we only want straight white men to succeed. We are merit-based. So as long as you're awesome like Cash Patel, we don't care. And he's Hindu, by the way. He's a brown Hindu. Don't we get credit for being open-minded? How come it's not celebrated if he's a DEI hire? I thought you said DEI was good. Wouldn't you be clapping for that? Like 18 logical paradoxes in your criticism there, sir. All right, back to the phones. Brian, Fort Worth, what do you think about the DOGE dividend? Do we deserve it?
Well, I think, like you and a lot of your other callers, it should go to the national debt. We should dare ourselves out of the hole. And I appreciated and understand your explanation of how this money would be printed and it would increase inflation. But I thought this money would be coming from the money we're clawing back from USAID and the city of New York.
Right, but that's printed money.
It is printed money, but that money, it's inflation impact. Now it's going back into the national treasury, and then they're releasing it to us, so that wouldn't cause inflation to go up again.
Well, no. It doesn't go back to the national treasury if it's already deficit spending. Like if your checking account is already overdrawn and you were about to spend some money on a PlayStation 5, but someone stopped you from spending money on a PlayStation 5, does that money go back into your account?
Well, no, not in that example. But I thought this money already went to USAID, and now we're getting that money back from it. So,
some of it's clawed back, but even if it is clawed back, it's deficit spending. Most of this is future spending that's been canceled. If it's already we've already sent money to Belarus for a butt darts coloring book or something, then if they've already spent it, we can't claw it back. That's already done. That money's already been printed. The inflationary effects have already happened. But just there's some weird economic or monetary theory in here, but. I hope that explains it better.
Yes, it does. And I believe Kash Patel is definitely merit-based for that position.
Oh, of course he is. Of course. You don't have to worry about it with us. We're not the ones who do quotas or even care. Of course we. Yeah.
Hey, last thing, my wife is very liberal. Well, she's liberal because I'm so conservative. I look left and see her. She loves your show. Keep working on her, okay? Don't give up on her.
You know, the ladies... they don't understand how much this stuff we talk about on talk radio affects them, and we do a really bad job making this less masculine and more inviting to women. So thank you for reminding me about that, Brian.
Yes. All right. Love your show.
Thank you, sir. Ron in Arlington, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think about the DOGE dividends?
Yeah, good afternoon, James. Thanks for taking my call. I think we ought to take it. I think we ought to distribute it to the tax-paying population. I look at it a different way, not as free money, but a tax refund. For the years that these kind of payments have gone out there using taxpayer funds, that the taxpayer had no clue how it got wasted, how it got fraudulently distributed, it's money going back to them. Plus, it helps the general population, tax-paying population, to kind of get over the next 3 months, because it's going to take a while for the Trump agenda to have some effect before any prices start rolling back, because nothing happens overnight, which explains why President Trump is going at such a rapid Texas Motor Speedway pace to get everything rolled out. It's going to take some time. This will help the American households, I believe, to maybe afford those little more expensive eggs, maybe pay down on their own little credit card.
Okay, so
I don't think this little bit is going to affect the national debt because that is so high, it wouldn't even make a drop.
So what you're saying is true, but only in the short term. Just like we all experienced when we got our COVID checks. Me and Miss Parker actually paid off our credit cards with that second one. We have 6 kids. So when the round of stimulus that rolled around where everyone in your house gets $600, we got $3,600. So we paid off our credit cards and then hunkered down. But you know what? Our credit cards are higher now than when we paid them off because our groceries went up 30% and our car insurance went up about 40% and the cost of just about everything else we spent it on. So in the short term, you're correct. This is a good chance for people to get ahead and buy eggs and whatnot. But for the rest of your life, you're going to be saddled with the pay cut that comes with inflation. And because this is deficit spending, it will be inflationary just like it was 4 years ago under COVID.
Well, I'm hoping that everything that is going to be on the Trump agenda is going to offset that where the impact would be negligible.
Well, we need about $1.5 trillion more in cuts from what DOGE has to see before it won't be inflationary for us to get some of that back.
I have a strong confidence that Mr. SpaceX is going to find that, if not more.
Well, here's the ugly truth. We're not going to be on a long-term fiscally sustainable path until we either eliminate or severely cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The unfunded liabilities it's just mathematically speaking, we can't cut the Department of Education or even the defense enough to cover all that on a long enough time scale. And when I say a long enough time scale, that boundary is getting close. The Social Security Trust Fund is going to run out in about 6-7 years. And then everyone's benefits going to get cut by about 22-23% and only go down from there. And for people my age and younger, we're going to be paying into Social Security our entire lives, and we're going to get nada. So the sooner we can just go ahead and wrap that whole mess up, the better, in my opinion. But I don't think a lot of people are ready for that conversation, because every time I have it on the show, I get emails for days. How dare you take my money? That's my money. I paid it in. Well, it's already gone. You already spent it on yourself. You spent all the money that your parents left you in the trust fund on yourself. You spent all your contributions on yourself, and you spent all our contributions on yourself too. You're not going to be looked on very highly by future generations, people, if y'all don't get this turned around quick. 800-288-9227. What do you think? Do we deserve DOGE checks? Will that cause more than harm than it will help? We'll continue this on The James Show. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're just talking about DOGE over here. If you want to jump in, 800-288-9227, because the question is, those checks, the idea have been floated that we all get a $5,000 check or so. I'm against this. I think this was bad. I think we all should regret getting that free money during COVID. Seems to be one of the big drivers, all those stimulus packages of the huge inflation here. I think it'll be more harm than good. But I notice the public out there, when you read in the comment section on social media, pretty split on this one. What do you think? 800-288-9227. Before I get back to the phones, coming up in 6 days, Brian Kilmeade's going to come to town. The guy from Fox and Friends. Yeah, he's also on our sister station, KLIF. He comes on right after Clayton and Sybil's morning show. But he's coming to town. He's going to do a couple hours of a presentation at Community Beer. That's at Commonwealth and 35 down here in Dallas, right before the 35-183 split. And then afterwards, hang out, have a beer. You can meet, I'll be there. I think Garrett's going to be there. Miss Parker will be there. Clayton, Sybil, Brian. We're going to try and get some other people you notice there. Some of my regular guests from The James Show I've invited, and a handful of them will be there. So if you can make it out by 6 o'clock, come on down. It'd be cool to meet you. For more information, we have it on our headline rotator at the top of WBAP.com. Tim, Grand Prairie, what do you think about the DOGE checks?
I don't think we should get them. I think that any money they save or can be brought back into the government should be applied to Social Security to actually fully fund it. Then anything going after that would go to the national debt. But no, I don't think anybody needs those checks for $5,000.
You don't think it should go to the national debt first?
No, I think they need to fully fund Social Security first, because they took money out of Social Security. They need to put it back and get that funded so that's secured for years to come, and then the national debt.
No,
we're worried about Social Security running out real quick. Why wouldn't we want to fund that first?
Well, because it's going to run out anyway. Like, even if you threw $1 trillion at it, that wouldn't even take up 1 year of benefits.
That's just my opinion. They need to take care of the Social Security.
Well, listen. I invite you to go look at the actuarial tables for Social Security, because as it stands right now, we spend like $1.4 trillion just in benefits on Social Security every year. Now, as we get older and we live longer, we live to age 90 or 100 these days, the pyramid is getting overturned to where when Social Security, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
At 66.
Okay, good. Then about the time that you were born, we had 16 people paying into Social Security for every person taking money out. That's down to 1 to 2.1. So we're about to be flipped over to where we don't even have 2 workers per Social Security recipient. It's not a sustainable thing. Now, from your point of view, that would be great for you if we could throw in maybe another $1 trillion here and there and make it last for another 10 or so years, because then you'll be able to get all of your benefit left before the Ponzi scheme collapses and nobody gets anything. So that'd be really good for you. But for people my age and under, you're screwing us even harder.
Also, I'd like to see them take off the caps on Social Security so that everybody pays on their their adjusted gross income.
Okay,
and Social Security.
Right. So a lot of people, if you don't know, if you make over like $180,000, it moves every year. You don't get Social Security taken out of that. Now, that is less than 1%. That's like the top 1% of income earners. That's not going to be enough money anyway. Because it's like when you see the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musk and the people at the highest end, the evil robber barons, they're not getting that from direct payments, in income. Most of their wealth is the capital gains that comes from the stock and the assets that they own. So like Jeff Bezos' actual salary is something like $84,000 from Amazon. You're not going to get a dime more from him, but you'll get a whole lot more money from, like the principal at the high school or someone who's like a superintendent in the fire department. I don't know what rankings are, but you'll hit the middle class and upper middle class, and you won't get any of the super rich guys by lifting that earnings cap. And even if you did, the math makes it unsustainable. We're living too long. The retirement age is way too young. There's not enough people putting in. We didn't have enough babies 20, 30, and 40 years ago, and we're not having enough babies now. It is unsustainable. It is a Ponzi scheme. You can maybe extend it for a few more years, but it will collapse. This is no different than the Bernie Madoff situation, except we are all forcibly coerced into participating in it against our will.
I agree.
Well, no, you don't agree. You want to keep it going. And listen, let me put it like this. Tim, I don't think I'm going to change your mind here, but I might change somebody's mind. If you are, let's use the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. People were paying in money. They were promised to get 12% return. They were paid off by the people who were putting new money in. And once the people pulling money out outpace the money coming in, then it collapses, right? But if you're the week before it collapsed, you discovered it's a Ponzi scheme, and you went and took all your money out before everyone else found out, you are now participating in the scheme. You understand that? You are now an active participant. You're not an innocent bystander. You know it's a scam, and you just went and did something immoral because it would benefit you, even though it would screw everyone else who's forced into the Ponzi scheme even harder, because there'd be less assets that get dispersed. Whatever's left over when the thing collapses, it gets dispersed to whoever's owed. You are now an active participant in the scam against the younger generations.
So how do you fix it so that the other people that are actually paying into it now, it's not going to draw anything? Where do they get their money back from? We're not.
You don't understand. We're screwed. So how about you don't make us pay into it for another 20 years for something that we're not going to get anyway? Look, the difference, there's no good solution. Either you're going to screw the younger generations and cut it off now, or you're going to make it last and rope it out for another 20 years, and then we won't get it, and you're going to screw us even harder. That's where we're at. For people in the 40s, 30s, and 20s, we're screwed already. Are you going to screw us harder? Then keep it going. That's your choice.
Well, they've got to come up with some solution that takes care of both people.
Shut it down. The solution is, while we still have money in the trust fund, shut it down, disperse it among the recipients, the people who are depending on it, and maybe they can annuitize it or somehow try and live off of that the best they can. But this is a tough discussion because there's not a pretty answer, and we're all screwed. It's a Ponzi scheme. Unless you die in the next 6 years before it collapses, we're all screwed. 800-288-9227. That's a technical economic term there, Garrett. I learned that in the textbook. We're all screwed. 800-288-9227. Outlaw Music Festival coming to Dos Equis Pavilion July 5th. This is the one with Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan. I want you to win some tickets from us. Text the word outlaw to 800-288-9227. Outlaw to 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to talk with America's Future Series David Hamilton about foreign policy, Ukraine, and all that fun stuff. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Woo, DOGE has got us talking today. Because not only are we just enamored with all the great cuts and firings that DOGE is doing through D.C., now there's a new wrench that's thrown into the discussion, the idea of us getting DOGE dividends. Trump floated the idea of a $5,000 check. I don't know if he's serious or this is a negotiating tactic or he's just putting his wet finger to the wind. But generally speaking, I'm against it. And with the exception of a couple callers, seems like a lot of people agree with me. It doesn't sound like a team red thing, does it? That's not free market economics. You're not supposed to go to the public treasury and start feeding off of it. That just makes you just smaller versions of the parasites that we're trying to kick out. A lot of people don't see it that way, and that's all right. Maybe you can explain it to me. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. What's his name? LeBron or LeBaron? LeBaron, I'm sorry, in Houston. You're next up on WBAP. What do you think about the DOGE checks?
James, I think all that money should go to pay our debt down. I think we need to take care of that first. I like the idea of having tariffs on our imports to start paying that down. That has to get down to zero. And then the second thing would be is to end the deficit spending. That has to stop. I think those two things would go a long way.
Yeah, well, inflation would stop if we would do that. And I hear a lot of people say that, but we don't hold our politicians' feet to the fire. For all of our lives, except for 3 years during the last two Clinton and the first George W., we've run deficits, and everyone just keeps returning the incumbents to their seats. So most people aren't serious about this.
Well, that's true. But perhaps things are changing because, in my opinion, the mainstream media is no longer the main media. It's, radio talk shows, streaming shows, those avenues.
The James Show? Yeah,
the James Show.
There you go, LeBaron.
You're the new media.
Yeah, I'm a new media on an old platform. Well, I appreciate it, LeBaron. I feel you too. First thing, we got to get rid of the deficit. Next thing, we got to get rid of the debt. And for all the talk about getting rid of the income tax or whatever, I'm in favor of that. Oh, really? We can just fund the whole government off of what? Tariffs? Yes, that's what we did before the income tax. We didn't have a big issue with property taxes. We didn't have the income tax. We didn't have all these cell phone taxes and fees and getting hit by a death of 1,000 paper cuts. Not only did we still have a standing army, not only did we still have roads and bridges before the income tax, tariffs used to give us so much money, and the government was so small and required so little resources that the states would get us, we would run a surplus and the states would get money back. I mean, I just read some book I was reading last year. Michigan scooted up its transition from being a territory to a state because if they did it for the end of the year, they'd get one of those state dividend checks. Our government used to be so small, we ran a surplus on tariffs only. And that's when we rose from being a backwater agricultural bunch of farmers to the hyperpower of the world. So it worked then. I think it would work now. Who's next? Glenn? Glenn in Ohio. Oh, you've called before, haven't you? Welcome back, Glenn. What do you think about the DOGE?
I haven't called you, but...
we have another Ohio listener? Who's the other Ohio? Is it Gary? I think it's even a G name. Anyway, go ahead. Welcome to the James Show.
Thank you. I lived in Plano 34 years. Now I live in Utah, and I'm trucking across the country. I'm 68, should be retired, but no.
All right.
Listen, every day has been Christmas for 30 days, and you're trying to ruin one of the days because that's our money. I want it back.
It's not.
It sure is. It was illicitly taken from us.
It wasn't.
And listen, if you don't want it, there are so many people you could help. You got kids. My son's trying to get a house, and look at the rates. Look at the market. It's just really tough. And people are having to charge groceries. In principle, I agree with you, but right now, man, we need a shot. We need a Band-Aid. So many people could use that check. Just me, I would pay down my credit card because the rates are just crazy.
How did that work out under COVID? Is it easier to buy groceries now that we got all that stimulus money under COVID, or did the inflation make it harder?
You can't blame that on COVID.
I can blame it on the printing of money in our response to COVID.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not blaming the disease. I'm blaming the monetary problem where you injected a whole bunch of deficit spending.
Yes, sir, you're right, because the Fed.
That's what this would do.
Inflation. They control it. They are it. Not you and me. Not a tax refund. They control it because they don't even have to print money these days. They just slide over to a computer, a few clicks on a mouse, and they create billions and shove it out to a bank. Right,
and I don't think anyone means like literally print. It's just a metaphor for creating. Most of it. We understand it's monetizing the debt. It's a better verb to use because it actually feels tangible. But I was under the impression that we all understood the cost, the inflation, far outpaced the $600 stimulus checks we got under COVID.
5,000 isn't going to ruin the country. We're really in desperate need, okay? And you got to remember, there's no correlation between revenue and spending. Okay,
should be.
Yes, I agree, but there isn't. That's why we're running a $2 trillion deficit this year, and our interest alone is $1 trillion.
So is that a bad thing?
In the long run, no. In the long run, I agree with you, and that is why I am willing to trust President Trump and Elon if they think we deserve this and it will help many American citizens. I think we should let them do it. I mean, in the long run, why are there 400 federal agencies? That's crazy.
Right. So
guys,
do you realize the duplicity in this phone call, though? Real quick, Glenn, do you realize the duplicity in this phone call? You say in one sentence that the debt and the national deficit, I mean, the national debt and the deficit are hurting us. On the other hand, you say we need to give people $5,000, which would contribute to the debt and deficit, which you already said was bad.
No, they're only returning a portion of the money they're saving through DOGE to us.
But if it's deficit spending, they're not returning the money. They are going to put less on the credit card than they otherwise would. There's no money to be returned.
Yes, sir. Yeah, but I'm telling you, in this moment, so many people are struggling. Look, eggs are $8 a dozen.
Hey, emotional appeals do not override the. It is. People are struggling is an emotional argument. People are going to, because my argument is if you do this, people are going to be struggling even harder going forward. It'll help them for like 3 or 6 months. We just went through this during COVID. The reason why, look, when we had 30% inflation over the last 5 years, that is a 30% pay cut. So if we get $5,000 now, would you rather have $5,000 now if it means you get a 30% pay cut for the rest of your life? It's not like you just get a one-time 30% pay cut. If you were making $100,000 a year in 2020, now that buys you $70,000 a year. Was that worth it? Or did you lose more than you gained because of the inflationary reaction to the printed money that was behind the stimulus checks? Because that's what I see happening here. And just because Trump and Elon says that this might be a good idea, I'll be happy to be the first one to tell them, hey, I love what you're doing with DOGE. I love what you're doing with the border. I love what you're doing on so many of these other fronts, but you're wrong on this one. I have no problem saying that. 800-288-9227. I think some people just want to check. 800-288-9227. What do you think about the DOGE dividends? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You know, it's not difficult to get people interested into a topic when $5,000 hangs in the balance, so I can understand why this is a hot topic, the DOGE dividend that's being floated. Should we get $5,000 checks from the money that's been cut from DOGE? I say no, and I'm looking for people who disagree, because I've already had a lot of people say, no, you're right, we need to balance the budget first. Then after that, we maybe need to pay down the debt. And then if we're just running a true surplus and there's money that's sitting on the books and not deficit spending, okay, maybe then we can talk about returning some of that to the people. But we have more negative consequences that came from getting free money under COVID that a lot of people remember. And I think they don't want that to happen again. However, let's talk to someone who disagrees. Do we have some disagreeing people over here? Well, here we go. Let's go to Donald. Donald in Buffalo Springs. You're on WBAP. What do you think about the DOGE dividend?
Okay, I do disagree with several things you've said today, but the one thing I want to address right to start with is the man that you were talking with about Social Security. The numbers you were giving and quoting, I want you to think about that. The numbers you were quoting about the number of people that are going to pay in, we're going to screw y'all youngsters.
Yes.
Those of us that are old that you were talking about, those numbers you're giving, those numbers can't be true if Elon Musk is telling the truth and we got millions of people that's collecting Social Security that don't belong there. Once they rectify all of that, then you might have some true numbers to tell. But I do want to make sure we understand those numbers are not fact that you're pointing out there. I do think that man's right. They need to fix the Social Security. I do not think they need to hand out $5,000 checks to anybody. It didn't do no good the last time, and it won't do no good now. But I do want to fuss about that Social Security because I'm one of them just about to get it, and I've worked my butt off all my life to give it into Social Security, and I feel like those of us need to keep getting it. And if you want to talk about somebody annuitizing their money, you youngsters got time to annuitize your money if you know you're not ever going to get it. But to just put us out to pasture, that's a whole nother thing, guy. we need to look at what we're doing, and I'm pretty sure once we figure out all the damn people that are
a couple things here.
That don't belong.
It's not putting you out to pasture if you have to go under the exact same retirement plan every human being did throughout of all of human civilization up until FDR. You're not getting cheated if you have to cover your own retirement. That's the most normal thing in the world, and that's what should be expected under a free market capitalist constitutional republic. On top of that, you don't understand how big the numbers are. When you say there's millions of people who are fraudulently getting checks, that's cool. The average check is under $2,000, but let me go ahead and round it up. So if we have 1 million people who are getting checks and we cut all that up, we're saving what, $2 billion per million people that are getting checks, right? That's how the math works out.
For those numbers you're giving right there, yes.
Okay. And so we're paying out about $1.4 trillion in benefits. So you're scratching not even, 0.2% of the outlays would be wiped out if we got rid of those for every million people that we got off of the fraudulent paycheck system.
I hear you.
Yeah. So for every million people that we take off, that'll save us $2 billion. And I guess it'd be $2 billion a month. So $24 billion. There you go. So $24 billion. So now we're up to 2%. That saves 2% of the outlays. That's not going to do it. That's not going to get it done.
Like I say, we need to see what the numbers are and where they really are before we compare things. And that's what I'm getting at. But I just disagree with what your numbers are because I know they're not correct. If it's straightened up, then we'll go to it. But to answer your other question, you're right. We do not need to collect any free money from the government. Look, we need to work for our money.
I don't delight in telling you this. I'm not happy that the numbers aren't going to work out. It doesn't matter what we think or what we feel, though. Look at the demographics. This is an unsustainable Ponzi scheme. And just like every Ponzi scheme on a long enough time scale, it's going to collapse. Now, I understand how, from your point of view, the most important thing that would benefit you and your family the most is if we can just find a few savings to keep this rope-a-dope going for another 10, 20 years until you're done. But that's what's good for you. That's not the right thing. That's not the moral thing. That's not what the math says. That's not what ethics says. That's not what economics says. That's you taking advantage of the system. You're just a very small version of the cronies that have been digging at the trough this whole time.
We didn't take advantage of nothing. We paid it in ahead of time.
No, you did. I'll say it again. Maybe you weren't listening earlier. From the point of view of the younger generations, you boomers are going to take the trillions of dollars that the previous generations left you in the trust fund. You will spend all of that on yourself. You're going to take all of your contributions, and that's all going to be spent on yourself. And you're going to take all the contributions from the people who are still younger than you and working and putting into the system. That's all going to be spent on yourself, and it's going to run out, even by the government's own admission, in 2033. So you will have spent 3 generations worth of contributions on yourself and then turn around and tell me that I'm screwing you?
The way you put it with the last man that was on there was incorrect, and that's what I'm telling you.
Well, look, we may be quabbling over a couple $1 billion here and there, but when we have a $1.4 trillion outlay, that's not going to be enough to sustain. And I wish it would. I don't want you to have to find a new way to go through your retirement. It's not a fun conversation to have, and it doesn't make me look like a good guy to tell you. But I didn't steal your money. I'm the guy going to the bank and opening the vault and telling you it's already gone. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to go steal money from other people and give it to you to make you whole? Because now you're just passing. It's like the law of conservation of government screwing. You can't unscrew it. You can only pass along the screw to someone else. But man, that was a terrible explanation. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Oh, I'm so sorry to be the first one to tell you this. 17 minutes ago, Zach Martin said he's retiring. Zach Martin's been with the Cowboys for the last 11 years. One of our best maybe our second best offensive lineman, maybe the best offensive lineman. If you're not a football fan, it's not a big deal. If you know, you already know. I don't have to explain it to you. Very disappointing stuff. Back to the phones, though. We're talking about the DOGE dividend. I'm going to try and squeeze everybody in here on this last segment because y'all are nice enough to hang out. Jack in Arlington, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on the DOGE dividend?
DOGE. We should keep the money within the government to pay the debts. I'll tell you what's wrong with the whole situation here is nobody's looking at the whole picture. The whole picture is we raise so much money in the United States that we feed the whole world. And all we've got to do is balance the budget. Why is it that this government cannot balance the budget and actually save money? Because they're all crooks. And then we got to look at the people who want to collect the $5,000. They're just like them. They're exactly like them. They don't care about the debt. They just want it now, just like the government.
Ooh.
There's a lot of solutions. Let's just take all the money that these illegal investors did who are in the government and pour it back into the government and put everybody on a capped salary and a capped amount of income they can make on investments. And then we'll solve the whole problem. And we need to audit every single account that comes out of the Treasury money.
You know, that's
everything.
Jack, thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to say to another caller 2 segments ago. I was like, you're just a little version of the politicians who go up there and feed at the trough. You're not going to get as much, but you're happy to get your money.
Keep voting them in as long as they keep giving them the money.
Right. So no matter the negative effect on everyone else's grocery prices or whether or not subsequent generations are going to get anything at all, you're just doing what's good for yourself. And so when you ask, why can't they balance the budget or why do we have a big debt? Because that's not what's good in the best interest of the politicians.
Right.
Partially because
if we just balanced it, everything would be fine. Social Security would be fine.
Right. But part of this also, Jack, is our fault. And I don't mean you and me. I mean most of the people out there who don't think like us, because they don't mind that their elected representatives votes for all these deficits. They don't mind as long as they get theirs, or maybe they're just indifferent to the whole situation. But a big problem is the voters don't hold these people to account. No one has lost their job for voting for all these debts and deficits. All the Republicans and Democrats, or not all of them, but most of them, over 80% of them in every election, the incumbents stick around. There's no negative consequences to it because we haven't imposed any negative consequences to it. You're making some great points, Jack. Thank you, sir. This is James in Mesquite. Hey, James in Mesquite, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on the DOGE dividend?
Well, what I want to take a look at is the difference between the $5,000 check and the money that came from the COVID. First of all, Trump didn't want to give a whole lot of money out. It's like $300 or so per person. Nancy Pelosi demanded some things, and she had Trump over a barrel. Nobody would get anything, or she get these ridiculous giveaways, including complete pay for unemployment for weeks. In fact, they still haven't spent all the money that was allocated for COVID. So what that does is increases the pile. It's like you say, printing the money metaphorically or actually. That does. It's a guarantee. In fact, top economists have always said that's the main cause of inflation. Yep. This is a different thing, because what this does is take money that would already have been spent and takes not all of it, but 20% of it, and sends it off to taxpayers. So, if anything, if you can cut back by 80% of this waste and fraud, you're going to decrease the inflation rate, not increase it.
You'll decrease the inflation rate, but it'll still be positive. It won't be as high as it otherwise was, but it still won't be zero. It'll still be inflationary. It will still have negative effects on your grocery store prices. So great. Over the next 5 years, we'll have 25% inflation at the grocery store instead of 30%. I would like to go to 0%, and that requires a little more fiscal sanity. Sorry to cut it short. I just want to squeeze in more people. DJ, Fort Worth, WBAP, go.
Yeah, so I'm surprised Bernie Sanders isn't all over this $5,000 handout. I mean, we're looking at a universal basic income here. I mean, if we could get out of debt and have a $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund like Norway, then we can start talking about handouts. But we've got to get out of debt. It's simple math.
Well, I like the way you word that, too, because so many people on Team Red say that they're against socialism and all other facets of life. But they love Social Security. They love their Medicare. They love it when money's taken from other people and given to them. They just don't.
Handouts are great when they're my handouts.
We are guilty of that on Team Red, just as bad as Team Blue when it comes to these entitlements, sir. Thank you. Sorry I didn't get to everybody. I tried. But, hey, we have a whole nother show coming up tomorrow, so you can come back for that one. The I Want My 80s Tour featuring Rick Springfield coming to a music hall at Fair Park July 20th. Special guests John Waite, Wang Chung, Paul Young. Get tickets and information now at livenation.com or text Rick to 800-288-9227. Rick to 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. Go check out the podcast when you get a chance. Mark Levin's next on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.